My current role is I'm ward manager of Upper Lewis 1 ward at Maudsley Hospital. So we're an inpatient ward. We're an acute assessment and treatment ward for the mental health of older adults. So we cater for 20 patients maximum, 10 male, 10 female. That's a very good question to start with. I could say it's because, I'm passionate about nursing and I'm caring, I think, in my outlook and my nature. But actually I came into nursing quite indirectly, I think, and again indirectly from nursing into mental health nursing. In a previous life I was a chaplain at a general hospital for 5 years, and that was my first contact with a hospital setting and with nursing. And I kind of felt an affinity towards that kind of work. So later, when I left the priesthood, I then moved to London, and through contacts that I had, I came to work at St. Christopher's Hospice in a support worker role. So that's how I came into nursing first. Well, I should say that I had worked for up to 10 years at St. Christopher's Hospice before I actually did my training. I think I started my training about 7 years in, and at the time I had signed up. I did my training here in London at King's, so I'd signed up to train as a general nurse, because the majority of the nurses working at St. Christopher's were oncology background, so most of the cases were cancer-related cases. So I intended to train as a general nurse. So for a year and a half of my training, I was signed up for general. And what happened is, it turned out that my personal tutor was a mental health nurse, and they were oversubscribed for general nursing, and they were undersubscribed for mental health nursing. And he felt that I would have a kind of an aptitude for mental health work. So I swapped over, and that's how I signed up for mental health nursing. Yeah, well, in my final year placement, I did a placement in continuing care, which was known as then, it's now called the specialist care units. I did it at the old Beckett House, which was then on the site of the New Cross Hospital, which is now gone, it's now housing. So I just really enjoyed that placement, and I felt that it was a kind of a therapeutic environment compared to some other mental health settings I'd been in, say by comparison to forensic, which I found was very controlling. So I felt I was more suited to kind of the older adult approach. So when I finished my training, I applied for a job at the old Beckett and started to work there. I'm sure you've heard the description that it's the fourth age of life. Yeah, well, they call it the fourth university. So there's one for teenagers, one for younger adults, one for middle age, and the fourth one is for older adults. So it's, if you like, a final phase of life, yes, but also a new phase of life, and that you approach it as being something that's a new beginning, and you see what can you bring to it that make it inspiring, and a new lease of life for people. The needs of older adults, I think, are, in my book, I think it's like almost a triple whammy, what I call a triple whammy. So they have the physical problems of aging, which is one. Then they have the mental health issues, which may be due independently of their age, might have been from back along, or maybe because of bereavement or some life event. But then on top of that, they have to deal with the social loss of neighbours, friends, relatives, partners. One of the things we struggle with, for example, trying to relocate people back home, we often find that the social services input is quite minimal. We find that they're living in accommodation, say from 25, 30 years ago. So for example, they're on the 40th floor and they now have mobility problems. They may not be lifts always working in some of those buildings. So it's kind of trying to locate them in a suitable environment where they can function at a higher level. I think one of the ones that stands out immediately in my mind happened while I was manager on AL2 ward here at Maudsley. We had an elderly lady who became very unwell, and instead of choosing to be moved across the road to King's for palliative care, she requested to remain with us and literally spend the remainder of her days on AL2. So we nursed her and we invited in the palliative care team from King's to come across and support us. So we looked after her for probably about 6 weeks in the palliative phase, and then sadly she passed away. Now there isn't actually a mortuary at Maudsley, so what we had to do is we had to invite in an undertaker to literally collect the body and take it to their premises. And I remember the morning that they came. So they came with their trolley and a cover, went through the ward because that's the only way they could access the corridor. So they went into her room. So then they transferred her from the bed onto this trolley, put the cover over her. But they had to bring her back literally through the lounge where all the other patients were, because that was the only way of passing through the hospital unit. And literally, as they came through, everybody, patients and staff, all stood up in complete silence while she passed through.
That was incredibly moving.
And it was kind of totally spontaneous. It was without any arrangement on anybody's part. Yeah, I remember that clearly. I think I would call it a short walk with John, in that it would represent a part of my journey through life. I don't think, even though you may change careers at different times, I don't think it makes your life disjointed. I think there is continuity, and I think there is something about learning from your experiences from previous events in your life and then bringing that to your current working life. So I think to be a short walk with me, because the years seem to have flown by. I think about 25 years in various parts of nursing, which seems like only yesterday I started. And I think that represents something about the intensity of the work we do, that time passes very quickly. I've never found myself counting down the hours and the minutes of my day while I've been a nurse. I think the person that really stands out there is Dame Cicely Saunders. She was the founder of St. Christopher's Hospice. At the time I came to work there, I think she must have been maybe about 80. She's since passed away, but when I came there, she had a custom where she had some apartments in the building, and she actually invited every new member of staff to meet with her for afternoon tea, and then a year on from that date she invited you back and she gave you a card which she called a coming day card. That's what she called it, which was like to kind of show appreciation of the fact that you've come and now you've spent a whole year with us. What's surprising is there was 4 wards, so about 62 beds at that time, but she was able to call every single member of staff by their first name, which really surprised me, but she could. I think my favourite place in the world would be Barcelona. I've been there a few times, but the time that stands out is when I went there. It was kind of shortly after they hosted the Olympics, and I hadn't been there prior to that. I was just impressed with the whole buzz of the city. It's beautiful, the architecture is beautiful, but the people, it was just very striking, and it was summertime, so the weather was absolutely beautiful. So I found it a really, really wonderful place to go to. I think my favourite would be a piece of music as distinct from a song, and that's The Lark Ascending by Vaughan Williams, which is quite a long piece, but I think to me it speaks volumes to me, even though it's a very quiet piece of music. I think it takes me away from kind of the present moment and the concerns and preoccupations of the present moment, and somehow it kind of lifts your spirit, takes you almost to an aesthetic place. So it's a place apart from the normal one, but still a happy place to be, and I think a place which I would aspire to be. Yeah. One of my favourite artists is someone called Jack Vetriano, who is a mixture of Scottish and Italian background. And I think of his prints, probably the one I like most is one called The Singing Butler, which is a butler holding an umbrella over a dancing couple on the beach. It's just a beautiful picture, and it's kind of, again, it just kind of takes you to that kind of summer moment, and you just think it makes you feel good, just feel warm about things. Yeah, I think it would be an older movie actually, a Western called The Searchers, which I think was directed by John Ford. I remember it was John Wayne was the main actor in it. It was a long movie where basically he was searching for a niece of his that had been kidnapped by a group of renegade, I think Indians and maybe some others. But it was beautifully photographed, and it kind of went through the 4 seasons of the year as they were tracking. So obviously they're on horseback, but it beautifully showed the changes of the seasons and the kind of determination and the grit it took just to stick at it. So it went on for more than, I think, for maybe up to 3 or 4 years in the terms of the time span. But it was beautifully filmed over the seasons, and you could see the changes. I think that's what impressed me. Well, I think it's a kind of an inner strength, an inner spirit, if you like, which I feel I have the capacity for kind of touching other people's lives. It's not anything particular or special that I might particularly do, but I think it's being able to reach people in a positive way, being able to make them feel appreciated in that moment, regardless of the scale of their difficulties and maybe the level of their illness. We have some really, really ill people on the ward. We have some homeless people on the ward, for example, at the moment. We've 3 people who would require a translator because they are not able to converse in any local type language. And you can imagine that's quite a challenge. Yet some nurses are still able to kind of make communication and contact and reach out to those people through gesture, through eye contact, just through touch, even though they don't actually understand each other's words. So I think it's something along those lines, something that you can't necessarily sum up and put neatly into a package, but it's something that has that kind of enveloping effect, that somehow it makes the person feel safe and feel that they can surmount whatever their problems, and that there's light at the other end of the tunnel. That would be it for me.